Hey guys, this is my last broadcast for the month of November. Today we're going to be discussing Johann Friedrich Blumenbach's racial categories according to his college thesis entitled On the Natural Variety of Mankind. And you see his skull, picture of his skull study. Was Blumenbach a racist? Well, I'll leave that up to you to decide. He studied the skulls of people of various races in order to come up with his conclusions. He graduated from the University of Göttingen in 1775 with his thesis on the human race. He ultimately argued that we are different by outer appearance, but we were of the same species. This is a list of his 5 categories of race. Blumenbach was a bit more specific about who fit into what racial category, and I'll break down each one within the next 5 slides. There are other people who have broken down people according to races and types, and this was also used in social Darwinism, but I'll reserve that for another time. Alright, of the Caucasian race. He states that the Caucasian race originates from Mount Caucasus because of its neighborhood and its southern slope. According to Blumenbach, the Caucasian race is made up of all people of the continent of Europe, with the exception of the people of the Lapland, as well as those of Eastern Asia. Also included in the Caucasian race are people of North Africa, the river Obi, the Caspian Sea, and as far as the Ganges River. He states that the Caucasian race is the most handsome and becoming of the races. The Mongolian race, according to Blumenbach's list of races, are the Yellow Race. The people who make up the Yellow Race are the inhabitants of Asia who are not Pacific Islanders, with the exception of the Malays and the Finnish in the colder regions of Europe. They derive from the Tartars, or in other words, the descendants of Genghis Khan. The Malayan race, the brown race, are known as the Malayan race. He described them as having a slightly swollen forehead and large mouths. These are the people of the Pacific Ocean, to include the Philippines, Mariana Islands, Molucca, and the Sunda Islands, as well as Malaysia and the Malambi of Madagascar. The Malay variety transitions from the extreme of the Ethiopian and the Mongolian. So it's a combination of Ethiopian and Mongolian. Okay, the Ethiopian race is the black race. The black race is anyone from the continent of Africa who aren't from North Africa. He addresses the issue that the Ethiopians come closer to apes than any other race. Why are Ethiopians all African, or why does he call all Africans Ethiopian? I have theory, but I can't really prove that, but I'm still looking into it. Okay. The Ethiopian slave trade, unlike the Atlantic slave trade, was said to have been regulated differently. Slaves from Ethiopia who were Christians were not allowed to be sold to non-Christians, which we know is very different from the Atlantic slave trade. The Ethiopian slave trade was also essentially within Ethiopia's border, so I think if you bought a slave in Ethiopia, you could not essentially take them out. They were treated as members of the family, fed, clothed, and protected by their masters. They could roam freely and conduct business as free people. This is all according to Wikipedia, so you guys can look it up. They also had freedom of liberty and culture. Since I think this is unique, I'm going to be further studying the Ethiopian slave trade, but if you guys have any suggestions for books, let me know. Last, but we know certainly not least, are the American, which is what he called the red race. I didn't call it that, so please don't call me insensitive. Blumenbach appears to show more empathy towards the native peoples of the Americas. He felt that the myths surrounding the peoples of the Americas to be very humiliating, especially the myth that women did not menstruate, as if they were animals, as if the women were savage in the New World. He described them as having deep eyes and short foreheads. He compares them in origin to Northern Asians. It was unjustly observed by first Europeans who visited the new continent that Americans came very close to the Mongolians, which add fresh weight to the probable opinion that the Americans came from northern Asia and derived their origin from Mongolian nation. Okay, so what is the problem with race and with putting people in racial categories? I'd already given my opinion on race and racism in my previous post on my blog, so if you want to know my opinion, please go catch that. If North Africans, who are by and large more Arab than Africans and are indeed Caucasian, where does this leave the rest of the Middle East? For the most part, Blumenbach doesn't classify them at all. He just states that, if you live in North Africa, then you're Caucasian, but we know that their religion and their look is Arab. If you are Arab, where do you fit in? Because he did not classify Arabs. Would an Arab living in North Africa actually consider themselves Caucasian? Would an Arab living in Northern Africa actually be African? Another thing, not all black people are Ethiopian. That goes without saying. And I suspect that Blumenbach may have had an affinity for Ethiopians or how they conducted their slave trade or whatever, and this is why he picked that particular race. There could be that particular ethnic group within Africa. We know that these days Asians as a collective and Pacific Islanders celebrate their month together. So do Asians and Pacific Islanders see themselves as different entities, or do they all see themselves as just Asian? I would also love to hear from people of the Americas. I know within Canada, Wab Canoe and other peoples of First Nations descents or First Peoples have spoken out, but I don't hear a lot from the First Peoples of the United States. There are more racial classifications, as I've told you guys. I just found Blumenbach's a little more fascinating because his thesis, in my view, leaves a lot of ambiguous questions, and it leaves a lot of gaps because it's really hard to understand where he came up with the information of each race. You can't just do that based on skulls. So I thank you guys so much for listening. If you can give me some insight on this also, just feel free to write me at my email address, alabamatara@gmail.com. Thanks, and have a blessed day.